Hello and welcome back to Genesis Designs and Modelcraft, and today I've got a quick look review on two kits, not one. Two boring spotter planes. All are they? Different eras, same kind of deal. Both European kits, European manufactured and designed kits, and I thought it might be nice to look at them together and see what we think. So the two kits are the Roden 1/48 scale Cessna bird dog. This design from, I guess, the late 40s, early 50s, used quite widely in Korea and Vietnam. Kind of old school, whilst at the same time not. This was an all metal aircraft, unlike earlier spotter planes, and lasted a really long time in service, right up until 1974. These were still being used in service. And are now privately owned around the place. I actually saw one of these at Riyadh a couple of years ago, beautifully restored to immaculate original looking condition, complete with markings and even dummy weapons. It even had the sort of painted on chalkboard thing with the the weapons load written on it. Absolutely beautiful aeroplane. Really strong crosswinds the day it came in. But being so small and actually short field capable, they literally landed diagonally on the runway so as not to exceed their own crosswind limits. And the other aircraft, the other model we're going to look at today is the Special Hobby L4, the Grasshopper, or Piper Cub if you like. Obviously of an earlier generation, used throughout World War II and indeed still in use around the world by private owners. If not in this original configuration, certainly more sort of upgraded, modern, same basic design aircraft. You can buy these still brand new. Not exactly like this, granted, but basically the same design can still be had brand new. And widely used for bush flying in the States and Canada. So let's get into it then. Let's start with the older one and the Special Hobby Grasshopper. So this I got only last week actually from Hannants. Now I do shop at Hannants relatively regularly, but not all the time. They're not my main port of call. I don't get any assistance or discounts from Hannants, but they are a very good, they're not quite a one-stop shop, but they're pretty close to it in the UK at least. And I had to get a few accessories, and I was looking for a few bits to pad out the order, and I saw this in the special offers list for $14.99, and I thought at that price actually I wouldn't mind one. So this kit was originally released in 2022. It's quite a modern tooling, and this is the fourth boxing of the kit. The initial one was a military boxing, and then in 2022, and in the same year they sort of released a post-war boxing with some more civilian markings in it. In 2023 another military boxing, and then this one in 2024 covering Pacific based aircraft. Normal price seems to be between sort of £22 and £25, so at $14.99 this is a pretty decent buy. Pretty little box. And this is something that's going to pop up a lot. Doesn't it look a lot like an Edward box? You know? A slightly older generation one, but Edward nonetheless. And Special Hobby are based in the Czech Republic. So let's see what we get in this little glossy little box. Paperwork. And a singular pack of things there. Again, very Edward. I did a Google before I started this, because I did wonder if Special Hobby had been taken over by Edward, because the similarities are so pronounced, but apparently they haven't. Although it's recognised that they do collaborate on certain things. Same sort of packaging. Okay then, the bare bones of it comes down to two sprues of plastic parts, and again they are quite Edward looking, but again at the same time they're not. These parts are distinctly a little bit more cottage industry looking, a little bit more limited run, although they aren't actually limited run, but you've got the sort of little bits of flash and the kind of tooling marks, which might be deliberate because this is a fabric covered aircraft, I don't know. But they're just not quite as clean, although you can clearly see the machining marks on the inside of these parts. But you tend to find they're just not quite as clean as a sort of major league injection kit, although they certainly aren't bad in this case. Things like ejector pin marks that are going to get in the way of the fit and things like that tend to be a little bit more prevalent in these sort of kits. But the surface detail is really very nice. We have rib tapes. I think you could possibly stub a toe on them, but they're not as bad as some that I've seen. And the fabric, the dips between the ribs are not really there. This is actually really, really nice. It's quite prototypical. Fuselage in one piece, and you can see this is not a big aeroplane. This is 1/48 scale. There's a little bit of sort of rudimentary framework detail on the inside here. Nothing very spectacular, but it equally isn't completely blank. The interior has got some sort of floor details and bits and pieces on it. It looks quite promising. The second sprue is a little bit smaller, and this has got all the odds and sods detail parts, if you like. And all of it is moulded quite nicely, aside from a little bit of flash here and there, which I'm not too worried about. I have to clean up all the mould seams anyway, and the flash is just a minimal extension of that, so I'm not really concerned. We've got the big wing struts here, lots of little details, small parts, a little propeller, some seats, struts, a little engine here, and these are probably the air guides for the same. Internal structure. Some quite nice detail in there. But as befits the subject, relatively simple nonetheless. Let me give you a close-up of the engine parts. Little 4-cylinder engine. And some sort of just general detail parts. Quite encouraging. Okay, moving on then to the transparencies. Separate bag. And I have not tried to mould all of this in one piece, which is probably for the best. You've got two side pieces, a windscreen and an upper. The framework is quite subtle. It's raised, and it's raised well enough to be easy to mask, but it's not too big, and it's raised on both sides, which means it could be relatively easy to paint the frames on the inside separately. I've not seen that before, and that is quite a nice touch. Here is the windscreen, which includes just part of the leading edge of the wing. And those are very nicely done. Put that back in the pack. There we go. Then we have a Ziploc bag with a small 3D printed part in it. I do not know what that is, but I do not doubt The instructions will make it obvious. And we have a small photo etch for it in this side of the decal sheet, and a little piece of, oh, this is old school, isn't it? And this is going to be a problem. The decal sheet is very likely stuck to this plastic bag because there isn't any tracing paper in there. And this acetate instrument panel is stuck to the decal sheet, and I do believe that's going to relieve some of these decals of their carrier film. Just a touch of it, yes. Three out of 10 Special Hobby must do better. Please put a piece of waxed paper over your decal sheets. And we'll come back to this in a minute. But here's the photo etch. This is essentially a couple of small details and some seat harnesses. Here is the instrument panel. A few handles and bits, levers and things, and set of harnesses. Old school, unfinished photo etch brass, but included. And here is the equally old school piece of film with the instruments printed onto it for laminating up with that photo etched brass panel. So that is all of the parts for the model. So let's have a look at the instructions then. Again, very Edward looking. We also get this little advert. On the back there's a correction for scheme A. We'll see what the corrections are in a minute. On the other side we've got Special Hobby now offers a new line of excellent 148 3D printed sets for plane and armoured vehicles kits. There's a selection here. What have we got? Some Panzerfausts in a box, a Continental engine for the kit we're looking at, which is nice. A Panzerfaust not in a box, Yak 9 exhausts, a Tempest engine, aircraft tow bar, Mitchell seats, SS100 Hanomag radiators, machine guns, some chocks, and an anti-tank barrier. That is quite the random selection of stuff. But yes, Special Hobby do their own upgrades now. So, instructions then. A little bit of history on the front here. Pause if you'd like to read that yourself. And when you open it up, you've got your kit inclusions are all here. The film, the photo etch, the printed part, clear parts, and your sprues. And then on to the instructions. Surprisingly enough, beginning with the cockpit area. We have dual controls, but apparently only one seat. Put that together, then build the little engine. And the front and rear bulkhead, and then we can put the fuselage halves together. It's not surprising that this should be quite quick and simple build. There we go, the second seat is just like a little jump seat there in the back, and then a cover. What looks like potentially a radio set sat right at the back. And here's our instrument panel. A little bit of structure there, and then fitting the glazing. You do have a choice here of glazing parts to suit an open side window or not. There is a wing spar with a little bit more structure to support it. And then fitting the windscreen. And here's a little advert If you want to make the build easier and spruce up your Grasshopper, we also offer the pre-cut inside and outside mask set, 3D printed engine and main wheels in resin, with part numbers for ease of ordering. Okay, then we're going to fit the wings, undercarriage, which is all made up out of different separate struts, exhaust pipes. So the printed part is an intake for the engine. It's only just visible down here. Add the wing struts, tail wheel, main wheels, tail planes, a little bit of rigging, detailed as we're going through. And finally, a few bits of handles and steps and an aerial. Pretty basic stuff, as befits the subject, frankly. And then we're on to scheme. So scheme A is for a Grasshopper based at Pervuvu Island in the Russell Island chain in August 1944. US Marine Corps aircraft. I'm just trying to spot the difference here. Oh, they forgot the badge on the nose. That's basically it. This is listed as being sea blue over neutral grey. It should make for quite an attractive scheme, actually. As per the box art. Then we have a more traditional olive drab aircraft over neutral grey. Bougainville Island, the Solomons, unknown US Army unit. I mean, most units had one or more of these kicking about. The pilots used to use them for all kinds of things. So here's an Australian one, New Guinea. This one had a bit of a history looking at that. There you go, you can read that for yourself, quite interesting, and this is certainly the one I would build out of the ones offered. And the final one, a Grasshopper operated by the Dutch in 1947. Another quite interesting one, if only because it just isn't American, frankly. Then on the back of the instruction booklet we've got some more adverts for the Siebel 204 and the Vought Vindicator in French service, and then some resin sets for the Siebel. Rear cover, Imam Row 44 Italian float fighter, very handsome beast indeed. Spitfire 12 and a glider. So the decals then, back to the decals. This is another area where Special Hobby are the same as Edward, because these, as you can clearly see by the damage done to this start and bar, these do have the easy peel carrier film. Yeah, so if you bought this kit and wanted to do the US one, you would at this point be scuppered. I've never tried to fit one of these with the carrier film already removed, but logic dictates that it wouldn't work very well. I don't know, maybe I should try that for science. But just like Edward decals, they've got a slightly dotty, sort of inconsistent look to the colours, are a little bit faded looking, which isn't always a bad thing, frankly. But they're not too bad. They've got the same very, very thin carrier film, which is tapered out. So as long as it stays attached, it will disappear into the surface of the model very, very easily. And if you want to, you can remove it. I think in operation, these decals are usually relatively trouble-free. The problem with these is really whether they're usable in the first place, more than what they're like when you do use them. So there you go, that's the Special Hobby Grasshopper or Piper Cub. Usually £20 to £25, currently available from Hannants for $14.99. So let's move on then to the Roden Cessna bird dog, a bit more modern, a little bit bigger. maybe. Let's see what we get with this one. So Roden are based in the Ukraine, so they are European still. This kit was originally released in 2018, and as far as I can tell, and according to Scale Mates, this is the only boxing that has thus far been released. And if you're thinking this looks a bit faded, that's because it is. It's been in a shop window for a while, and it is a touch faded. This kit is spectacularly expensive. It seems to be around the £50 mark at full price, but again it is currently available on the Hannants special offer list for £33. So I have to say straight away, I think you've got to want one of these to want to pay that sort of money for it. But let's see what we get in the box anyway. Now Roden, like Special Hobby, are one of those manufacturers that have come from pretty much, again, the short run cottage industry side of things, and over time have been improving and improving such that their modern releases are actually very good. And what we get in the box this time: 2 plastic packs, a sort of paperwork pack here, and a set of sprues. Now these are not resealable bags. I'm going to destroy the value of my kit right now for you. It's okay, don't thank me. Canopies are not separately bagged. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 sprues plus transparencies. That's quite a lot for such a small aircraft, isn't it? We'll start with these then. So, the first thing you think when you look at this is ICM. This is very reminiscent of the way ICM kits look, modern ICM that is. It's got that sort of velvety aspect to the finish, so a very slight texture. Not enough of a texture to be an issue by any means, but just a touch of texture. Some very prominent ejector pins which will need to be snipped off the insides there. You can really see the flow patterns as well. But the surface detail's lovely. A few sink marks around these details here. They're not massive, but they are there. Nice, crisp, recessed detail. And really not a lot wrong with it at all. And that is sprue B. And this is A, clearly a pair of fuselage halves, and again this is not a large aeroplane. It's probably a bit bigger than the Cub, but not much so. And again you've got that sort of texture. Short run kit texture. Will benefit from a light sanding before paint and or priming and sanding. Texture is worse down here underneath, but again nice crisp recessed panel line detail. A little bit of flash here and there and a little bit of internal detail. See some of the texture there. And again very prominent ejector pin chunks. These will need to go, all of them. Next up then, some smaller parts, and in common with the Special Hobby kit we just got a little bit of flash here and there, some slight kind of, I won't say roughness, but just slightly less accomplished moulding, cheaper tooling, whichever way you want to look at it, but very typical of these kind of manufacturers. Just a little bit more effort required on cleanup to get your bits looking as good as they can. So we've got the engine, cowl front and side pieces, some interior bits, firewall and control surfaces here. Got that very characteristic Cessna corrugated control surface thing going on. And that's the one piece cowl front. It's ice cream o'clock in my street. That's the ice cream van singing. Alright, now this is sprue D, and we have two of these, two identical sprues. So we have the main wheels, some internal parts, the wing struts, probably weapons rails here, just bits and pieces. Again, a little bit chunky, going to need cleanup, but will be perfectly adequate in use. You've even got door handles on here, and wheel brakes by the looks of it. Very nice touch. Here, sprue E is our 6-cylinder engine. Actually a very nicely detailed 6-cylinder engine at that. Got the crankcase and cylinders, rocker covers, exhaust intake, bits and bobs. That's really, really very nice. And this is not on display. Unlike the Grasshopper, you can't actually see any of that unless you choose to model it with the cowls open. And lastly then, sprue F, control columns, struts, seats, tail, wheel and leg, propeller, and some more detail parts. And again, you can see that the detail is there, the moulding is pretty decent. You just do need to spend a little bit more time cleaning the parts up, taking away the mould seams and just taking in little bits of flash away with it. But when you do that, these parts will be just fine. So that's the plastic parts. There's quite a few there. Let's check out what's in the other pack. Oh, well, canopies here. These were not separately bagged, but don't seem to have suffered any damage. And actually look quite nice. Front and rear windscreens. These are the ones up in the wing, up in the roof. Got the wing leading edge lamp and a couple of others. Again, a little bit less accomplished than a mainstream kit, but they're perfectly usable. A little bit of polishing, maybe, and they'll be fine. Destructions. Okay. Alright, we've got three seats of decals. There's a little bag with some what look like pieces of wire in there. Two pieces one length and one piece another length. Looks like steel wire. Look at these in a minute. And see if the instructions will let us know what's going on with the wires. So these are just paper instructions, not in colour. As you'd expect, history, English is in the middle. We've got Russian, English and German instructions. history, with a little bit of performance data down the bottom there. Maximum speed 185 kilometers per hour. Cruise speed 167. Sounds about right. First page, these are not stapled. First page, you've got your parts diagrams. Your wire is listed down the bottom here. Colour callouts are Vallejo. I didn't say what the colour callouts were on the special hobby, but they're Mr. Hobby / Mr. Colour. So these will have you start with that lovely little engine, tiny Continental, and then move on to the undercarriage, complete with wheel brake and brake line. Firewall, engine mounts, pilot seat with controls and bits, instrument panel, adding all of that into the floor and then sandwiching it. Not sure about adding the landing gear before joining the fuselage halves would make me nervous for alignment reasons. Be quite easy to get it skew if. Joining the fuselage together, building the wing up. Adding the flaps. Then attaching the wing and the engine cowls, and then the aerial suite. And that's it. Again, relatively simple, but actually quite well detailed again. So colours, we have this scheme, US Army, Alaska, 1966. What colour is it supposed to be? Oh, bright orange. A bright orange bird dog with huge lettering on it. Pretty cool. Second one. What I'd imagine most people would opt for, including me, I expect. 1966 to 67 Ford air controller. Leica, supporting the 3rd Brigade. So this one is going to be ADC grey overall by the looks of it. Yeah, I believe the colour scheme should be ADC grey. I don't think it's natural steel. I think that's some form of typo, honestly. So ADC grey is a light bluish grey with black anti-glare. And this one is armed as well. And the third one, Canadian. Tactical Air Group Mobile Command, Canadian Armed Forces, early 1970s. And this time they're saying it's colour N, which is olive drab. And there was me thinking for sure that would be yellow. So this is overall olive drab. Black anti-glare panels. But that's your instructions. And then the decals themselves. Quite a large sheet. This is a reprint of that section for some reason. And here it's an instrument panel decal. There we go. So this looks, it's got very, very dull carrier film and it isn't separated. If you look at it in the light, you can see you're going to have to cut around these. Got propeller tip decals there, a few bits and pieces of stencils. Not sure, I feel like these might be a little bit hit or miss. In fact, I'm wondering if this sheet even has any carrier film. it looks a lot like it doesn't, because this sheet does appear to have it and it's shiny. They look a little bit silk screen printed as well. You can see the texture. So not sure this decal sheet's actually going to be usable looking at it. These two have got a gloss carrier film that's very visible, but this sheet I don't think it has. No carrier film, so this is not usable at all. And what was the wire for? Did anybody spot that in the instructions? Because I didn't. Ah, aerials. That's what two of them are. That's what all three of them are. They're aerials. Okay, so the pieces of wire are for aerials. Cool. So yeah, I think for this kit, these decals are obviously no good, and I think considering the price, like I said at the beginning, I think you'd have to really want a bird dog to want to pay that much money for it. As you can probably tell by the fact that I own the kit, I did really want a bird dog. There we go. And the thing with these is, I've called the video "Boring Spotter Planes," because I feel like aircraft like this are broadly ignored by modellers and indeed humans of all walks. Just like general aviation, small things, Cessnas, Pipers, et al, Osters, you don't see models of them much, do you? And it seems like most of the ones that you do are only really available because of their military credentials. So things like tiger moths, beavers, otters, twin otters, these models you see here, would we have them at all if they hadn't been operated by the military? I suspect not, and it's a real shame, because they're very endearing little aircraft actually, and I'm as guilty as anybody, because I was never interested in things like this until I started learning to fly, and I started flying a Piper aircraft, and then, would you believe, all of a sudden I found things like bird dogs much more endearing. I was absolutely blown away by the one I saw at Riyadh. It's a beautiful aeroplane. And at this scale, I think they make delightful little modelling subjects. They'd be very, very small in 1/72 and a little bit too fragile, I suspect. Much like tiger moths, to be fair. But in 48 scale, they're just a nice size. And there are a trillion options especially for the cub, for painting them in all manner of ways, should you desire it, and if you can source your own decals or print or make yourself some masks. So there's really no need to stick to the military schemes at all if you don't want to. I will, particularly with this one, because it will fit in beautifully with my Skymaster and early Bronco for forward air control aircraft. But I thought I'd group them together because they're both relatively small, relatively simple kits, and they're the same sort of genre, I suppose. So will I recommend them? I definitely recommend this one, even at full price. I think this looks to be a nice kit, and I expect it will go together well. I have built a couple of modern special hobby kits, the Heinkel 162 and the Messerschmitt 109E in 72nd. They're both absolutely delightful little kits, so I expect good things of this one. This one, you're only going to buy this if you want a bird dog, aren't you? That's obvious. It is. I don't know why it's so expensive relative to other kits. I've no idea. Although Roden kits do tend to be relatively expensive. However, there is no other option if you want a 48 scale bird dog or Cessna 170. This is it. I don't know how you'd get around the decal sheet either. Maybe contact Roden or you know, if you bought one and your decal sheet was like mine, you'd have to either go back to the model shop you got it from or contact Roden via whoever distributes them in the UK. Looks like it's Bachmann. Personally, I'm not overly concerned. I'll get some masks made up instead, but that's not ideal in a kit as expensive as that. Not ideal. I don't sugarcoat, that's pretty bad in a kit this expensive. I don't expect the decals to be unusable, because those are not even bad, they're just not usable. So that's not good. If you're going to buy one of these, check the decal sheet before purchase, would be my advice on that. So there you go, quick look review on something a little bit different, boring spotter planes or not, you decide. So with all of that said, I think it only remains for me to say, until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other. Genesis out.